Well, what of these 400,000 variants? We've been through the basic evidence, but what about the 400,000 variants? Well, this is false advertising. False advertising. It reminds me of an advertisement by Colgate, which said years ago that more than 80% of dentists recommend Colgate. 80% of dentists recommend Colgate. Now, Colgate toothpaste was sued for this advertisement. Why? Why was Colgate sued? Because 80% of dentists recommend every toothpaste. Presuming on the fact that you're using a toothpaste, dentists are happy with that. And so to say that Colgate has 80% of the endorsement of dentists is really misleading. And Colgate was sued for false advertising. The same is true when Bart Ehrman says that there's 400,000 variants in the New Testament manuscripts. Why? Well, number one, many variants exist. 400,000 variants exist because we have many manuscripts. We have so many manuscripts that this leads to the variants. I don't know how else to put this. If we only had one manuscript from 800 years later, critics would say, well, we only have one manuscript. How does that compare to Tacitus or to Suetonius or to Herodotus? Oh, the New Testament is just in dire straits. But when we have so many manuscripts, they say, well, there's a lot of variance between the manuscripts. That isn't a problem for textual criticism. That's actually helpful for textual criticism. This is a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. It'd be like if somebody complained, I just hate that I'm so good looking because everybody looks at me all the time. I don't know if you've had that problem. I never have had that problem, but maybe you've had that problem. Okay, you can't complain about that. If you have the problem of being good looking, that's not a problem, that's a benefit. Or, I'm so popular, everyone wants to be my friend. Or there's so many manuscripts for the New Testament that there's so many variants. This is not a problem for the New Testament. This is not problematic, it's positive. Number two, most variants are completely meaningless. Most variants are completely meaningless. So out of that total of 400,000 variants, most of those are completely inconsequential. They're neither meaningful nor viable. So 70% of the variants in the documents are due to spelling errors. Spelling errors, where it's just a spelling error. We know what the word is. It just the scribe misspelled it. Or they moved the letter nu in Greek, a movable nu. It's kind of like when we use the indefinite article a. If it comes before a vowel, word with a vowel, like a elephant. No, you would say an elephant. A movable nu is just something that moves in Greek to a certain part of the word because that's the grammatical convention of the Greek language. When a scribe messes this up, that's considered a variant. What about word order? Well, yes, the manuscripts have words in different order. That is true. But Greek is an inflected language. So words could be in an entirely different order, but it wouldn't change the meaning of the text at all. It would change the emphasis. So if a word comes at the beginning, that shows in Greek that that's being emphasized. But when a word has a certain case ending, it shows whether it's the subject or the direct object or the verb. It doesn't change. So you could have the sentence, Mike ate the bear, or you could have the sentence, the bear ate Mike in Greek. And from those case endings, the inflection, you would know who was the subject and who ate whom. It wouldn't change the word order one bit. In fact, the simple sentence, Jesus loved John, can be written in 16 different ways in Greek, but it wouldn't change the meaning of the text one bit. So too, almost all of the variants are incredibly short. They're only a verse or two long. In fact, there's only 2 variants in all of these 400,000 variants that are longer than a verse or 2. Mark 16, 9 through 20, which virtually all textual critics believe was added at the end of Mark. And then John chapter 7, verse 53 to chapter 8, verse 11. This is the story of the stoning of the woman caught in adultery. She wasn't stoned, but you know the story. He who has never sinned may cast the first stone. That story is questioned by textual critics. That is the longest variant. Every other variant is just a verse or 2 long. And just to be clear, none of this is a secret. This isn't being brought to light for the first time. This is in our Bibles. Look at this here, for example. Which verses can you see are considered to be textual variants that weren't in the original? Can you tell? Yes, you can tell. They have brackets around them, people. They're right there. You can see it for yourself. In our Bibles, they have brackets. Well, maybe in Mark 9, which is the place from which this is taken, maybe Jesus or some scribe was trying to make Jesus seem like he was adding the doctrine of hell into his teaching. No, when we just look at this, we see that this was taken from verse 48. The scribe, whoever he was, it's called ditography. This is where you write the same thing again. And he just looked down at verse 48, or at least that verse, and he wrote it up above, and this entered into the New Testament manuscript. So none of this is a secret. None of this is really confusing. This is in your Bible. If you're a Bible reader, you've seen this in your Bible, and you've seen the footnote. Many of our earliest manuscripts do not contain these bracketed verses. Let's look at it from this perspective. There's many types of variants, but as you can see here, number 1, 70% are spelling errors. Number 2, most of them aren't meaningful. It's not like it changes the text. Number 3, most of them aren't viable. Yes, they're disputed, but they're not really that disputed. It's not that we're really staying up at night wondering whether these are actually in dispute. There's really only a 1% sliver of all of these variants that are both meaningful and viable. So that is a far cry from the 400,000 variants that Bart Ehrman refers to. Furthermore, number 3, variations between manuscripts does not result in a contradiction between manuscripts. What do I mean by this? Well, just imagine that, you come home tonight and your wife says, "I love you." And then later she says, "You are loved by me." And finally she says, "I adore you." Now, would you say to your wife, "Honey, stop contradicting yourself. First you're saying I love you, and then you're loved by me, and then I adore you. You keep contradicting yourself. I can never keep up with what you're saying." No, you wouldn't say stop contradicting yourself. You would say stop repeating yourself. Or in this case, I love it when you repeat yourself. The same is true when we read the New Testament manuscripts. These variants are not contradictions. As I said, you could say the same exact sentence with words in different order, and it would mean the same thing. Number 4, if the New Testament text is unknowable, as it is often alleged, how could anyone know this? I don't know if you picked up on that. That is what's called a self-defeating claim. Let me give you some examples. In Mark 1:41, it says that either that Jesus had compassion on the leper or that he was angry with the leper. That's a true textual variant. It's meaningful and it's viable. Bart Ehrman says that most of our translations say that Jesus was compassionate on the leper. But Ehrman says, I know the truth. Jesus was angry with the leper. Well, how can he claim to know the truth of the original reading of the text written by Mark in chapter 1, verse 41, if the original text is unknowable? Well, of course it's knowable. Otherwise, Dr. Ehrman would be out of a job. There'd be no reason to dispute or debate something that is fundamentally unknowable. The same thing is true with all of the textual variants. the very reason that we say that that wasn't an original reading of the text is precisely because we can get to the original meaning through the science of textual criticism. So, Ehrman asserts how uncertain the text is, but then claims to know what was and was not in the original text. It seems to me that this is either speaking with rhetoric in the first case, or it's being self-defeating. If we were to make this into a true statement, you can't both know and not know the original text.